Hello, everyone. Good evening to you. Thank you guys for joining us on Africa Today. And good morning and afternoon to everyone in the US and all across the world. Today, we are going to be talking to Tedd Joshua. He's going to be talking about, Africa and how important it is for us to have build brands back in Africa. Also, we're going to be talking about the music industry and how Afrobeat is changing the world right now. A little bit about Africa Today. This show is going to be more about sending encouraging and uplifting words to Africans and people all across the world. We're also going to try to, promote Africa to become one and in unit, because what is happening today all over the world and especially in our motherland in Africa, what this show is trying to do is trying to show that we are one people, and we're one nation. And so Tedd today is going to be talking about how it's important for us to come back home and build our community, build our society, and build our country. As we are looking forward into the future and the world is changing, Africa Today is, one of those shows that is going to be encouraging a lot of Africans all across the world. Tedd, I want to welcome Tedd on our show today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tedd is an award-winning producer in the music industry in Kenya. He's based in Nairobi, Kenya. He's also an entrepreneur and the founder of Joka Joko, if I said that correctly.
Yes, you have. Joka Joke.
Joka Joke. Joka Joke. So thank you for being here. I know I gave a quick background about who you are. Do you mind introducing yourself a little bit more so we can get familiar with you?
Introducing myself is always very difficult because I wear many hats, pardon the pun. I am a creative. I like to call myself a creative geek because I've been in the music industry. I've been in film and animation. I've been in the advertising industry, basically all around the creative industry. Worked in the UK, worked in West Africa, Nigeria to be specific, different cities in Nigeria. I've worked in South Africa, and I've worked in East Africa, the entire East African region, doing different things from music production to television, animation, training people how to be television producers. And now I am back in Nairobi, Kenya, which is my base. And I own a leather company, a leather bag making company. So we make jackets like what I'm wearing, and we make pure leather bags. But not just leather bags. We endeavored to think different and create what we would call an African luxury brand. The word African and luxury aren't ever put together because everybody thinks, oh, Africa, it's that little poor place. But that's not the case. We are a proud people with a very proud heritage and with lovely, absolute, beautiful cultures that we hardly ever celebrate. So we use the word luxury, African luxury, very intentionally. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
I love that. What you said right now, it makes so much sense because, especially I've been based in the US for a while now. And when people talk about Africa, usually it's not in a positive way, right? They, like you said, they usually think of Africa as, poverty, people that are uneducated, people that have no sense of understanding, no sense of, cognitive understanding of what the world looks like. So to see you guys do that and to put luxury in front of, Africa in this way, it's beautiful. And, I hope that more brands and more people are going to start to do this as well as we're trying to promote Africa to grow in the way that I think you and I see it.
It is so wildly important. I tell you why. Africa is one of the regions that imports the most produce from across the world. We import the most. And also, if you go to places like Nigeria, they know what luxury is. They import French wine and French cuisine and the French this and that and everything. And so do we in East Africa, and so do the Southern Africans. We know luxury goods when we see them. But what has happened is the African dollar has been spent outside of Africa so much that we have forgotten to spend within. It is so important that we spend within, and not just spend within, but also create brands that are very robustly African, that can go out into the world and also do what the Italians have done and the French have done by domination in the fashion industry. I mean, I do not see why African music can dominate the world as it has done now, but fashion can't. I mean, if in hand, if we have a good thing in music, that means that we have a good thing in film, we have a good thing in fashion, we have a good thing in so many other genres. So it's so important that we do spend within and make sure that the circular economy generates wealth and it generates billionaires in Africa so that we can sustain ourselves and grow the people.
Absolutely. I love that. We're going to get back into this branding conversation in a little bit, but I want us to talk about music a little bit because I know that's your background where you start your journey. So seeing Afrobeat take over the world in this way, and you being a music producer, and I also know off camera we had a conversation about when MTV went into Africa, what they were trying to promote and how they were trying to, introduce music to Africans. From your perspective, what did MTV try to do to change the narrative of our culture when it comes to music?
From my perspective, and I've shared this back in 2007, I shared this on a BBC interview. I said my fear right now is that African culture is going to be wiped off the face of the globe as we know it because of one thing. When MTV and Trace came into Africa, they came in and they wanted to make urban music. African music is not entirely urban music. In fact, urban music accounts for about maybe 5 to 10% of what Africa is. Africa is jazz. Africa is Afrofusion. Africa is rock in its entirety. When you watch what the Tuaregs are doing with their music, and they tell you this is traditional music. They're playing guitars how they used to play it. You look at what has been influenced by Eastern Africa, Taarab music. Taarab music has its origins when the Bantu met the Arabs and created this music which had orchestral sitars and a lot of instrumentation to it. But because it did not sound urban, it was being blacked out. It was entirely blacked out from MTV and Trace. And they had a code, so to speak, where you had to have the pretty girls and you had to have the fancy cars and you have to have the flashy watches and the houses behind you and everything for you to get airtime on MTV. And I said, this is wrong because this is not the entire true face of Africa. Show the real face of Africa, who we are. People like Baba Mal, Youssou, Salif Keita, Angelique Kidjo, the musicians from South Africa, Hugh Masekela, none of them ever got any airtime on these television stations simply because they were too traditional, quote unquote. Africa is full of, in fact, when you say Africa, you say tradition. Mm-hmm. So you show the real true face of Africa. Yeah. And it's not dancing girls in skimpy outfits and flashy cars and beautiful townhouses. It's a lot more. I take pride in simple things like the gourd, which symbolizes Africa in its entirety. How people used to drink their traditional brews under a tree. How music was composed for certain reasons. For instance, A lot of groovy, pulsating music was composed for the farmers, so that when there was the collective tilling of the ground, you would get inspired to keep on tilling in the hot sun. And that inspired hip hop, it inspired R&B, it inspired house music, but it's being wiped away as if it didn't exist.
Absolutely. I love that. And, you mentioned hip hop here, and looking into the culture today in America and looking how the hip hop music is being portrayed in the America today. I believe that exactly what your fear was with BBC. Like, I believe that your fear has literally come to fruition right now, especially when we look out into the music industry in the United States today. Because, like you said, our ancestors that came into this country use music to keep their life going, use music to work in those slavery plantations. They use music to communicate with each other, because that was one of the ways that they were able to communicate without the white masters understanding what they were saying.
That's right.
So from this place, and as a music producer and someone that has a really robust knowledge of this sector, what would you advise the young Americans that are singing musics that are repeating affirmations of violence, and removing our culture away, because we're all one at the end of the day? What would your advice be for our young brothers and sisters in the Western world and in our Afrobeats community right now, right? Because we see the shift happening slowly. What would your advice be for them?
It's a very simple Swahili saying. Swahili, again, I said, is a language well spoken around East and Central Africa. Mwacha mila ni mtumwa. The person who leaves their culture is a slave instantly. As soon as you leave your culture, you become a slave to other people's culture. Now, it is so important. It is so important for especially the African Americans or Black Americans, as whatever you'd like to call them, and Africans across the globe, to visit Africa, visit the villages, listen to the music, listen to the people speak, learn the cultures, understand where you are from, what your roots are made of, understand the foods, taste the foods, look at the fashion and see what can inspire you. What nuggets are within your DNA that make the person that you are, that have been wiped out through time? Try and revive them and showcase them in the music, in the fashion, in the culture globally, as opposed to just showing violence. Because to be honest, Africa is not about violence at all. Africa is not about violence. If Africa was about violence, we would not have been enslaved.
Absolutely.
Other people would have been enslaved.
Yeah.
If Africa was about violence, the raw materials within this region that the entire world needs would still be here, and we'd be controlling it, because the most violent people are the ones who dominate the most. Africa is a very docile place. Africans love, and they love from the bottom of their hearts. They love to share. They love to, amalgamate. They love to embrace people and allow people into their region. If we were not that type of people, there would only be very Black people in Africa. But even if you look at the tapestry of Africa, from north to south, there's all colors. There's all influences. There's influences from China, from the 14th century. There's influences from Portugal. There's influences from Arabia. There's influences from all over the place, because we like to embrace and become a melting pot. That's what Africa is.
I love that. And one of the things you said was we love. One of the things, that's what I've learned about Africa, especially when you look at our family homes. We're just full of love in Africa. We're gonna switch segment a little bit, and we're gonna talk about social media and how we could use social media to actually brand ourselves in Africa. So when it comes down to your brand, Joka, I know you started putting it on social media, and it has gradually grow, and it's still growing. I think that's going to be one of the biggest brands that we're going to see coming up soon in the future. So how did you use social media to grow your platform?
Um, what happened was I was not really big on social media, and the story actually starts with a very sad note. I I I had my late wife passed back in 2017, and when she passed, I sort of closed all doors and didn't communicate with people much. And what happened was I would share my grief on social media as a healing and therapeutical instrument, and also just as an inspirational instrument, because here I was in my 40s with a 3-month-old child, whose only source of nutrition was her mother's breast milk. Now I've got to figure a lot of stuff out. What formula works for her, because not all formulas, will work for a child. What her routine should be, how to be a mom. I had to learn all of these things, and the only place, because all my sisters are abroad, the only place I could get advice became social media. And then as we started to grow, Jay and I, the numbers started to grow, and I thought to myself, well, there was this thing that my late wife had been talking about 3 days before she passed, which was she wanted to start her brand. She had put it on hold, and it was a fashion brand. And she had said, I really want to see how we can go into bags. That's the next frontier for me. I want to do bags. We had done t-shirts and apparel and stuff like that. And so I started researching, and because of my background in graphic design and package design, I thought, well, bags aren't too far off from creating packaging. So I'm sure I can learn this. And I started to source for leather. I realized that there was a whole lot of leather coming out of Africa. In fact, Ethiopia is one of the leading in the global leather industry, followed by Kenya, followed by Tanzania. There's all this leather coming out of Africa, and it goes to China, it goes to Europe, it becomes another fashion brand, and then we can't even afford to buy it because it's thousands of dollars. And I thought to myself, hold on a minute, how come we're not using our own raw material and resources in this region to create something that is African truly from the ground up, the hides are from Kenyan and East African cattle. The tanners are 100% Kenyan. Why don't we do a value chain where from farm to the bag, it is 100% Kenyan made or African made? How come we can't do that? And as I started to ask that question, a lot more people started to ask me, well, why don't you do it? And I thought to myself, well, here goes nothing. Let's start by doing luxury bags. And I've built brands for people over the years. I have 30 years experience of just building brands for people and doing advertising for Coke, Sprite, and all the big brands, including alcohol beverages. So I thought I'm going to take that knowledge that I have of brand building and create a legacy brand, not just for me, but for this little girl, so that she remembers her mom. So Joka Jokes actually, synonym is Josiah, Ka Qatar, which is my late wife's late name, and Josiah, which is my daughter's surname. So it's Joka Jok put together, but it also has an African meaning, because Joka Jok is part of the lineage that I come from. We came from Egypt using the Nile coming down. So when you look at it, you see the black pharaoh as part of our logo because he was Nilotic. So we did a lot of symbolization to also just leave that in people's minds that we come from a proud, rich heritage.
Yes. Wow. I love that. I do see that there is a bag next to you. Um, is it possible we can see a little bit of the bag next to you?
I'll show you the ladies' bag.
Yes. I love me some purse.
This is this is the Wendo tote bag. It's pure leather.
Yeah,
Um, and Wendo is my daughter's name. So this is actually our highest selling bag. Although we've got about 75 different bags that we could show. I mean, you'd have to go to the website to see them. But
yeah,
we also men's bags. So this is the Otonglo Time, aka the Money Maker, and the Money Maker is a unisex briefcase bag. It fits laptops and everything. It's shockproof, and if you look very closely, it's got an East African, the original East African coin from back in 1922. So you can have, the bag comes actually standard like that. So we're trying to pay homage to a lot of things, and the places that we've been, who we are, the experiences that we have as Africans to celebrate the region.
absolutely. Love it. And I think this is what Africa needs. And I think this is what we need to continue to show the world, that this is what we can do in Africa. This is what we're importing. We're taking all these raw minerals out of Africa and sending it into Italy, sending it into France, sending it into US, China, for them to make things that don't even represent us. And the biggest struggle there. It's like when they do make these things, they don't give credit to where the real minerals comes from. you know when Gucci or Louis Vuitton make products, they don't give credit to where they're getting getting the products from. I saw you were going to say something, so.
Why should they? What they want to do is they want to push their brands, and I keep on telling people, especially in Africa, the magic is not in the raw material. The magic is in brand creation. We've got tons of raw material. We outdo the entire globe when it comes to raw material. Think about West Africa and cocoa. Does that cocoa benefit West Africa? No. Who does it benefit? Out of the 6 billion that is left in West Africa, 6 billion only, 94 billion goes to the global chocolate industry. I would rather Africa gave 6 billion to the West and 94 remained to generate wealth, so that they don't keep on throwing these coins that they give to us as charity. We don't, Africa does not need the West's charity. Africa needs hands off. Look at the oil sector in Nigeria. Crude oil comes out of Nigeria, is refined in Europe, and then brought back into Nigeria. If you are in charge of your crude oil, you should be in charge of processing it into whatever petroleum product you need it to be, including fertilizer, which Africa needs to grow its crops. Think about East Africa and tourism. A lot of people come to East Africa to do a lot of tourism, but when you actually dig deep, a lot of the conservancies are not owned by Black Africans, and that is just the truth, which is sad and a desperate scenario. You look at South Africa, it's the same thing. The diamonds in Botswana. Right now, there's the debate of, shall the Boers give 50% to Botswana and take 50%, because they've been giving Botswana about 15%. It doesn't even make sense, you
Yeah.
know. It belongs to me. I'm the one who should dictate how much you buy it for and what percentage remains with me, because it belongs to me. It's not ours. You are not African. I am the African. I am the owner of the product.
Yeah.
It's like your neighbor coming and telling you, well, I see you've got this lovely house. I'm going to buy it for $1. Okay, here's the dollar. Goodbye. No, it's my house. You don't dictate the terms. I do.
I 100% agree with you there. You know, when it comes down to, branding in Africa, how can we, when a young entrepreneur hear this, someone that is having the creativity mindset sparks right now, hearing this conversation, how can they start to also built a brand for themselves, because I understand like many Africans are very hardworking. A
Yes.
lot of them probably started selling, pop-off beans, rice, whatever they sold, right, from a very young age. So there is that, hustling in them. There is that entrepreneurship that's naturally built in us. So how can someone start to build their own brand from this place that they're in right now? Um, Also, when we look at the financial status, if they have some type of money, or if they don't have money, how can they start to generate some money to build their own brand?
I kid you not, it's not as complicated as people make it out to be. The honest truth is, it is a hard knocks journey, yes, but it is not that complicated. How to start? If you have 1,000 followers on your social media platforms, calculate 10% of that. 10% of that is 100 people. You have 100 followers who 100% will give you their money for a product that you're selling. If you've got 10,000 people, that means that you've got 1,000 people who will 100% give you their money for whatever you're selling. Now, what is it that you're selling? Let's say you're selling soap, and it's handmade artisanal soap that you've made yourself. Show people the journey of how you're making this soap. Bring them into your lab or your workshop or your studio. Let them go through the journey with you. Let them feel the emotion of what you're going through as you try to create your brand, as you try to sell the brand, and let them feel like they're part of the journey on your socials. After which you start to create a following, and that following spirals upwards. People start to consume whatever it is that you're making. And if you're making something that's solid, it's only a matter of time before it starts to actually generate you not just money, but wealth. It starts to generate you income that you can save and you can reinvest in yourself. When we started as Joke, we started with one sewing machine and a couple of pieces of hides, literally, and not much of an idea, a concept for a journey, and we hoped that it was going to take off. Now, I gave up an entire music career for
Yeah.
that, which was not easy to do because I was at the top of my game when I gave it up. I could have continued. People keep on begging me to continue, and I'm just like, no, I'm on a totally different. I feel a different calling within me to show people that this can be done. We can use the tools that we currently have on our phones. Just a caveat. A question that any young person should ask themselves is, how much time have I spent on my phone today? If you've spent 6 hours, ask yourself in all honesty, how much of those 6 hours have generated you income? If the answer is zero, get up and change it. You must get up and change it. I calculate how much time I spend on my phone and how much it is that of that time that I'm pushing my brand forward. And I say to myself, well, no play and too much work makes John a dull boy. So yes, I'll spend maybe 25% of my time watching, the cat beating up the dog, or the monkey playing with the cat's tail. But 75% of my time, I will push my brand. I will push my brand. Even if it gets one like, that is one like. Even if it gets 0 likes, I will continue to push my brand. However, you had asked a question about how do you use social media. The question I have is, does Africa think that using other people's technical knowledge to push their brands is going to be sustainable? I don't think it will be sustainable. Simply because as an African, you cannot go sit under somebody else's tree and have your very private family meeting under your enemy's tree. They will know everything that you are talking about, everything that you are doing. They will copy paste it, or they will just frustrate that meeting. This tree symbolizes social media. So I'm also saying it's time that people like AU, African Union, which should have lots of money in theory. It's time that it started thinking about how to generate social media platforms that are African, that secure the African, the same way the Chinese did. The Chinese secured their front because they knew that if they allow these Western controlled social media platforms to control their social status and their movement, what's going to happen is when the West doesn't want you to think in a certain way, they will block certain things from your view on social media. And I start to see that happen now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned something really great right there. When it comes down to social media, like, blocking and, having propaganda putting propaganda in front of us and, shading some type of informations. What are some challenges that you have faced with social media? Because I know social media, like Instagram for sure, blocks some futures for Africans to not have in Africa to be able to promote and make business on social media. What are some of those challenges you have been facing?
One of the things that happens is if and I've done this actually as a test, if I post anything regarding the brand, it gets very little visibility, no matter how passionate it has been created. If I post anything regarding my little daughter, it'll get more visibility. However, if I post anything regarding Africa on Meta, it's off. It's off the radar of everyone. When I posted the same thing, for instance, the video that you initially saw, I think it came off of TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that TikTok is giving Africa more free speech than Meta is.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting, and one asks themselves, why is that so? Because numbers don't lie. If the same video, I mean, on TikTok, I've got maybe 16,000 followers, but one video has over 100,000 views from 16,000 followers.
Mm-hmm.
On Meta, I've got 350,000 followers, and the same video has 2,000 views.
Mm.
The maths is not mathing. The
Yeah.
numbers.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. I think that's a barrier that we have to break through as Africans. And I think you mentioned about us creating a platform for ourselves in Africa to promote African brands. I think that's where we need to look forward to in the next future if we want to see African products, grow. I think us having our own social media platform in that is based in Africa to promote African brands, I think that's where we should be heading to in this moment.
It's so important. And the African brands, I mean, when you think about KFC, it's an American brand. How old is it? When you think about Coca-Cola, it's an American brand. How old is it? When you think about Nasset and Gillette and the story, how old is it? When you think about Singer, how old is it? When you think about Zildjian, who makes cymbals, how old is it? It's family owned. You think about the Glenfiddich Group. How old is it? It's Irish. When you think about Ford and the story of Ford, and you fast forward how many years now? Maybe over 100 years. Look at what it's become.
Yeah.
You think about Mercedes Benz. Mercedes is the founder's daughter's name. You think about those things, and we don't see the importance of creating brands, because brands are generational wealth secured.
Yeah.
When we think about it, it's so important that Africans create brands, because brands equals generational wealth secured. There is no important journey than that of creating a brand. It's like in Swahili, they have a saying that the person who plants the coconut tree will not see the coconuts, but he's planting it for the next generation. It is so important for Africans such as you and I to start seeing that. And for Africans in the diaspora, whether you are, you know, born in Africa and migrated to the diaspora, or you're born in the US or Europe or wherever it is important that you reconnect not just with your roots, but find a base. In the next 60 years, Africa is going to be the global playground for the billionaires. If we as Africans don't have the billions, we will end up as slaves, not just in the West, but here on the continent. So why don't Africans within the diaspora see this and start to own? I mean, it's not far-fetched that you could come into Kenya and own an animal sanctuary, not just homes. It's not far-fetched that you could come into Tanzania and own a sports college, you know? And there's so many things that can be done on the continent by Black people, but they they fall for the stereotype that Africa is poor. It's not poor. Africa is ready.
Absolutely. I love it. Yes. And we're almost coming to the end of our show for today. And I want us to end with your love music. You know, I had saw a video on you on TikTok. I can't remember exactly what song you were talking about, and it was you of and a friend of yours that had created the music, but this friend had passed, and this music did not make headlines back then. But you know, you were replaying this video, and you were saying how, you know, after this many years, it's finally here, and it felt so good for you to play that. I was really I enjoyed the video, watching you enjoy the video, watching you enjoy the music. So how important is it for, you know, young Africans that are creating music right now to stay persistent? And because Afrobeat is literally one of the not the one of is the biggest music, you know, going on right now. It's the most popular everywhere you go in the United States. They're playing Afrobeat. So how important is it for young artists that are still looking to build themselves up to stay persistent and to keep their culture in the music in this moment?
As a creative coming out of Africa, I would say rule number one: believe in yourself more than you believe in anything. Believe in yourself. In fact, believe in the dream and the vision and the talent that the Almighty has given you more than you believe in yourself. Because there are days you're going to doubt yourself. There are days you're going to doubt your purpose. But look back inside. What is that gift that you've been given that you know? When I do this, my spirit is set free. When I do this, I fly. I become one with the angels. When I do this, I can't even breathe. I'm you know, I'm in a totally different realm. Once you believe in that, no matter how many people tell you it can't be done, in time it will be done. In time it will be done. As soon as you stop believing is as soon as the dream, the vision, the focus, the gift, all of them are thrown under the rug, and you just become another Joe Blog. You know, I see so many people giving up on their dreams simply because, you know, somebody said no. There's going to be 10,000 people who say no. You're just looking for one yes. You're just looking for one yes. And that one yes can make you fly higher than the skies. Remember, it's not about the 10,000 no's. It's just that one yes. And it takes time. It takes time to build whatever you're building, be it you are a songstress or a singer, songwriter, producer, you know, creative who wants to fuse all of these things. I mean, think about it. If you listen to people like Richard Bonner, who is singing in his mother tongue, but fusing classical music with jazz music, with how much belief did he have to have? Because he was doing something that's never been done before globally, ever, ever, ever. He's a pioneer in that, and he's believing in this thing that you can't see, you can't feel. You know, you just know it's there, and you have to dig into the depths of your soul to create it and develop it. It's so important that we as as creatives from the continent, Africans from the continent, believe in ourselves. This dark skin doesn't mean that you're bad. This dark skin doesn't mean that you are not a star. It actually means that when you drape gold on you, it just shines bright because you know when you put gold on white, it doesn't look all that, but when you put it on black, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Amen. Amen. I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for, this beautiful conversation. I feel like I could talk to you forever.
Yeah.
It has been amazing having you here and you sharing your brand. And I just want to steal a little bit more time,
Yeah.
when it comes down to, I know you have a vast knowledge in this too, when it comes down to the movie industry and how the Western world, Hollywood to be precise here, has painted the movies that are coming from Africa. Like, what's the last one that, like Wakanda and The Woman King and all these movies that they're making? How can Africans start? Because in my perspective, I think an African lady for Woman King, I think an African, actress should have been the main character there. Not to take anything from the main character, Viola Davis, but I think an African woman should have been there. If we are going to tell our stories, we should be putting us in the front line. Or if they're going to tell our stories, they should be putting real Africans in the front line doing those things. So what what is your perspective when it comes down to the movies and how we're being portrayed in the movies?
I love Viola Davis, and I love what she did with the Woman King,
Yeah.
Queen Zinga to be precise, from Central Africa, the home of the Bantu originally. I love what she did, and I respect it. However, there were so many other queens who fought. Some fought against the Italians in Ethiopia, some fought against the British in Kenya, and Mekatilili wa Menza, for instance, from the eastern coast of Africa, fought against the British, and fought when she was actually very, very young, and she galvanized her people together around it. These stories will not be told because they make the West look bad. And why should I tell your story when it's making me look bad? Unless I convolute it and twist it and turn and water it down so it doesn't look too bad. Wakanda was a great attempt at giving Africa back African pride. But I think if it was told on the continent and it was given to African actors, it would be so much more powerful. And when you think about things like this warrior queen that was portrayed by Viola Davis, I want you to go and look at the people of Kau. The people of Kau are the original Nilotic people. And look at the height of the women from that region. They are over 6 feet tall. How was a European going to fight the women of Kau? Forget the men. With their fierceness and their ferocity and their beauty and their majesty when they stood. These were queens whose, to date, it is known that some of their bride price was up to 300 heads of cattle. How many white men can afford 300 heads of cattle right now if that was bride price given? They were valued, valued, so revered. And these stories aren't being told enough. It's time that Africa started to tell her own stories using Africans, because we know. My grandmother told me about our journey from Misri, which people call Egypt, but she called it Misri, which is its original name, and how the journey down the Nile was, and how Joka Jok came to East Africa, and how I should always take pride in being from Joka Jok. Again, there's so many stories that aren't being told of the African migration and why the African migration happened, why the Bantu were driven from Central Africa, which had some of the biggest gold deposits to date. into Southern Africa, into Eastern Africa, into Western Africa. And when you do the research and you see the similarity amongst the people, um, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I look at names in West Africa, like I was once in a city called Nembe in Nigeria, which is on the coast, and I met a guy called Ogola. And I said, you know, that same name is in my tribe. Ogola is in the same name in my tribe. And I'm from the eastern side of, the continent. And I looked and thought to myself, wow, how we have been divided and how we are not telling our stories is so sad. Because once we start to tell our stories and we start to tell the truth, we realize that Africa is one thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree. I agree 100%. And, you know, thank you again so much for joining us on Africa Today. Your knowledge and your information that you have shared with us, I really hope that this video continues to meet so many young Africans, because our continent is made out of youths. It's made out of young people like myself. So, and when we were talking earlier off camera, you talked about how you were telling your daughter a bedtime story. And, I asked, what book were you reading? And you said, oh, no, we weren't reading no book, all in an imagination. And I love that, because once we start once we start opening our mind in Africa, once we start seeing that we are the creators of our own life, we can create a new Africa without
Yes.
losing who we are.
Yes.
Africa is going to blow, Africa is going to develop, and Africa is going to become the continent that we can be proud of, and we can talk about it in the way that we want to, other than allowing other people write our history for us.
Yes, that is, and it's about time. If we don't take control of it, what's going to happen to us is exactly what happened to the Red Indians.
Mm,
They controlled a beautiful country called America.
yeah.
They no longer control it. If we do not control Africa, that is exactly what is going to happen to Africa. We shall be wiped off the face of the continent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Any final words for young Africans, the young youth of Africa today, that you would like to encourage them on their journey?
The God forces within you. It is not necessarily what has been given to you and we know as the Quran or the Bible. The God forces within you. And once you are born with a gift. See that gift through. Some of us are so gifted, plural. We are born with multiple gifts. Let us share our gifts with the world. Once we share, we create wealth, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us. That is why we are here now. It is so important that we know this truth about ourselves.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. I want to thank everyone else that has been listening to our show today. This was the first debut show of Africa Today, and it was amazing. I could not have been any, grateful to have this show start this way. With Ted, I could not be grateful that you came across my social media platform, and that's how we connect. Social media, African
Yeah.
social media is the new is something that if we use to our own advantage, like Ted was saying, we can definitely create a new life for ourselves. Social media has every opportunity that we can manipulate to benefit us in this day and age. So, for all my African brothers and sisters that are listening, I hope you guys are staying safe wherever you are. Continue to be proud of who you are. Continue to see yourself as, the kings and the queens and the God that you are. And, let's remember one Africa, one nation, one people, together we can overcome any challenges that is in front of us. Together we can rebuild Africa. Together we can stand as one pillar. I hope everyone have a blessed evening today. Take care of yourself, love yourself, and thank you guys again for listening to Today Africa. Stay blessed. Bye, Ted. Thank you.
Bye.